So I made it to Phoenix, and yesterday was really interesting because I went to a few restaurants and these places were closed. And I was like, what? Because we were just walking around. I was like, oh, let's grab something to eat. And didn't even look on Google, just kind of walked around and then they were like closed. So I was like, oh gosh. And then I'm reading articles like this over here that are saying that restaurants, empty tables, and rising costs pushes more restaurants into bankruptcy. Red Lobster, Rhode I don't even know if I'm calling that right. And other chains close locations as Chapter 11 filings grow. I did a little dive, I did a little digging, and comes to find out they're not the only one. Noodles and Company is closing locations, and Buca di Beppo's closing locations. Hooters is closing locations. And BurgerFi is closing location. Red Lobster's closing location. Rubio is closing locations. Cracker Barrel. Applebee's. So you name it, it's on the list. TGI is closing locations. Denny's is closing locations. So it's all these kind of iconic brands that kind of lost the touch. And one of the things I'm starting to notice is that people don't value these restaurants anymore. They lost their touch, they lost their innovativeness, they lost their core customers. And whenever you lose your core customer and you expand to a massive amount of conglomerate, you lose focus. And when you look at In-N-Out burgers, if you're from the West Coast, you kind of know In-N-Out, right? And you can see how they have a line out the door. So going past one yesterday was like, wow, there's people at like 10 o'clock at night waiting in line to get some food. And that's what, as a store, as a food store, you kind of need. Because as I mentioned in other videos, I owned a food industry. I owned a brick and mortar frozen yogurt store. And it is so tough. Even though you have good margins on food, like when we bought the frozen yogurt store, I think we paid like a few cents per ounce and we sold it for like 600% more than we bought the product for. It's the little things that kill you. It's the small stuff that really, really gets you. And I like, what do you mean? So when you have an industry or you have a food business and you're in a restaurant and you're in a facility where you operate like that, you have rent, you have insurance, you have employees, you have electricity, you have water, you have all these other things that really, really actually add up. And for us, our electric bill was like $700 a month. So it wasn't really that the yogurt wasn't doable. It was that electricity and all these other factors were actually killing us more than the rent. So rent wasn't even too bad. It was all this other stuff that was bad, that was killing you. And now when you're looking at these Denny's, all these other huge, huge, huge corporations, they got to focus and get their stores back to where people actually want to go and get their core customer to come back. And I'm looking at it, and I went to Denny's with my family the other day, and you do not believe how expensive it got. So we ordered like a normal breakfast menu for two people, and it was like $60. And I was like, man, Denny's, when I used to go in like '09 with my family, I remember it was like 20 bucks. And now all of a sudden it's 60. And now all of a sudden, when you're paying $60 for breakfast with a coffee and everything, you're in a whole different league. And so you price creeped yourself out of it, because when you are looking at who you're targeting and how much it's going to cost you, it's like, man, it's expensive. So now you can say, oh, I can get just an egg and a pancakes, and I can get two pancakes and an egg, and then it's going to be like $9. Yeah, but if you have family over and you go out, you get something from from their menu that's like a little bit more expensive, and you're like, it's $18. Then you get a coffee, so that makes, or like 16, and then you get a $4 coffee that makes it 20. With taxes and tips, you're paying 25, and then your family or your partner also does that, and you're at $50, $60 for breakfast. And so you're now in a whole nother class. And so when you went to Dennis like 10 years ago and you were spending $8, $9 on a breakfast deal, you were in and out with coffee for like 12 bucks, 15 with tip, and that was doable. And now it's all of a sudden it's over 20, and you're like, hey, this is starting to not be doable. Because if you're making $25 an hour, you're going to have to work 1 hour just to go to that restaurant. And breakfast never was that expensive to begin with. Breakfast was always like cheaper because lunch was also cheaper and then dinner was way more expensive. And I used to spend $60, $70 on dinner. Now, depending on where you go, that could be lunch or that could be breakfast. And now it's $100 for dinner. And now I'm asking you, is this the new world that we're living in, or is this just the name of the game now, where everything just got so much more expensive? And now, to top it all off, we have rising unemployment. People do not have the money. People are pulling back. Houses are sitting on the market longer. I got people in my comment section saying that they've had, let me read it to you guys. Okay, here we go. So this is small business, real world. I don't know this person, but this person wrote and said, I'm a physician, ran a solo practice for 10 years before I got a job with a company. Almost went bankrupt in the first year and was heavily indebted. This went on for 10 years until I got burned out running a business and practice of medicine. Those doctors are still in their own clinic, are running in a deficit, or their profit is razor thin. I don't miss those days at all. Happy to be a peon, just do the medicine, get paid, and go home to the family. So this is one. It's like, this is just one of them. But when you go back, there's a lot of other people that were in the same business. So when you're looking at it, it's like not only this, it's just running a business in general got so much more expensive. The profits are razor thin because everything around it got so expensive. And now when you're looking at, okay, restaurants are going out of business, doctors' offices are going out of business. So who can withstand all these price hikes? Well, Walmart, these big conglomerates, these big stockholder companies that have millions of dollars that can file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and come back out of it because they have so much money, they have so much transaction volumes, they have all these things that they can do to get out of it, to figure it out somehow. And you and I do not have these options. You and I cannot compete. You and I are out of this world unless you have, I don't know where the sweet spot is. Do you need to have 10? Do you need to have 15 stores? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I can kind of mismanage for a little while and still be good. Because if you're a small business and you mismanage 2 months, you're done. But if you're a big conglomerate and you have these wacky CEOs that just go around and do crazy stuff and fly in private jets and don't really care about anybody, just the shareholders, and do all kind of crazy stuff, you can mismanage a little bit. You can feel like not going to work and not doing much, and you still make money. But as a small business, you need to have you need to have your pulse on the trigger, on the finger, or whatever you want to call it, right there, right then, at any given time. And if you do not do that, you're gonna be in trouble. And when I'm looking at it, that everybody is struggling right now with housing costs, with just everything going on. I don't even think that it's necessarily the cost of living. It's just everything. It's just that we're not making enough. It's not necessarily the cost of living, it's just that we're not making enough. And these companies are paying $12, $14 an hour. And I'm looking at people in my program where I help them find a job in Allie's Career Catalyst, where we help them find jobs. There's people with master's degrees that are looking for jobs that are paying less than $20 an hour. And then they think they kind of justify it and rational and says, oh, it's so tough for me to get a job right now. And unemployment is going to run out and do all these crazy things. And I'm just like, man, we got to change this. And to top it all off, nobody in their right mind is going to do a huge investment before next month, right? Why would you pull anything? Why would you move? Why would you sell your house? Why would you buy a house if you kind of get a feeling of who you're going to vote for and who's going to be on the ballot and who's going to be we know the nominee, but who's going to be the president? And then you can kind of gauge what's going to happen, because it's really dicey right now to see who's going to do it. It might be a coin toss away, who knows? But I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't make life-changing decisions on it. And so who knows what the market's going to do? And for me, I'm just like, you gotta figure out what are going to be your best next moves, because when I'm looking at it and I'm seeing like all these restaurants got a business, you can't start your own business. You can't go open up a brick and mortar store. Yeah, you could probably start a food truck, but brick and mortar, no. Look at all these Chapter 11 bankruptcies filing. Look at all these furniture stores they're closing, like Big Lots. Now it's the restaurants, and now you can say, oh, some of it is Amazon, but I don't think it's necessarily all Amazon, because people do like take carry out. They don't want to cook at the house, but I can't afford it. I had to wind down spending because who knows what's going to happen. You need to have a little cushion in your piggy bank for the bad days. If somebody gets laid off, if you have a health emergency. And before I was running a little bit less lean, and I had employees that were on payroll that I didn't necessarily need and that were not providing to the bottom line. So it's like, sorry, you gotta go. And I had to make some cuts, some hard decisions for the business, because when Meta and everybody else does it, and I keep telling you guys, they are trendsetters. And when they're calling stuff like, you gotta be efficient, I follow. And so do all of these other people. All of these other small businesses, they also gonna say, hey, if Meta does it, then, and they see it in the market, everybody else will do it. And so when I'm talking about, this is what I'm seeing with Meta, then this is most likely, when I report about it, what I'm gonna be doing too with my small business, because they're trendsetters. I'm not a trendsetter. I can't come up with ways on efficiency and all these other things. I look at what they're doing, I optimize for my business, and I keep it rolling, because that's the only way how I can stay afloat. And a lot of people don't understand that, because they've never had that fear of losing everything as a small business owner, but they've also never had the adrenaline when you're making money as a small business owner, how it feels. It's almost like, I can't relate because I've never really did drugs, but I think this is what it close as it comes to with the highs of doing drugs. When you're flying high, you couldn't do wrong. And you guys can tell me if that's just me. When I'm signing up people and I'm signing up and I'm having these sales calls and I'm doing all this and I'm looking at it, it's like, man, this was fantastic, and you're feeling good and you're doing all this. And yeah, that's just how I can kind of sum it up for you guys that don't know. But brick and mortar, out. The only thing that you can kind of do is online. If you're not doing online, I don't know what you can do, because opening up a brick and mortar, man, you got to have some money saved up, because while you're getting customers, while you're acquiring customers, I should say acquire, because people think just because you have a sign outside means that they know about you. No, 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 they don't know about you. You gotta pay to get these people into the store. Is it with ads? Is it with social media? Is it with all these other things? Is it with Google traffic? You put up you pay somebody on Yelp, because that's a whole nother video of extortion. When you're a small business owner, Yelp calls you up and say, hey, you got some negative reviews. You want us to delete them? Yeah, it's gonna cost you so much, and we're gonna send you some traffic. So you get one of these representatives on the line, and it is extortion at its finest. So they'll call you up and say, you'd be great for a Yelp small business project, or whatever they're gonna call it now. And let me send you over some dots here. They send you over numbers, traffic, blah blah blah. And then they're like, oh, and some of these reviews that I looked at your store violate our guidelines, so we can remove them for you. Um, for you. And I was like, what? Then they're like, yeah, you can come and we can, if you pay us money, we can review these. We can review these reviews and remove them if they report our guidelines. And I said, what do you mean? It's like, oh, we have a way of phrasing it so most of the bad reviews will violate our guidelines. She's like, those are not reviews, buddy. But that's it. That's how they do it. If you give them money, everything's possible. So that's why sometimes you go into a restaurant and you're like, oh man, this has good reviews, but the food stinks or something else. And they either bought the reviews or they just had the really shitty ones tossed out. And yeah, it's another scam, right? So you as a business owner are constantly being extorted or sold to or done something. And it's funny, I saw a video of Mark Cuban the other day and said whenever he walks into a room, he's never the one that sells. He's always the one that's being sold to. As a business owner, you're hardly the one that sells your stuff because you have social media, you have these other things, and you only if you sell like solar or something else. But when you're in the food business, you're hardly the one that sells because you're gonna have to hire people to do it so you can have oversight, so you know where the money's going, you can do all that. And you're not gonna be the one that's gonna talk to the person walking into the store. You're gonna have to do bigger things and trying to get bigger clients and try to network and get your store to do more revenue and do all these other things. And so yeah, it's just some food for thought. Love meeting in Arizona, a little different background. They have a little nice little quiet street with sidewalks. Where I'm from, they don't really have those. Took the minivan down. They got like these cute little rabbits. Let me show you these. They're running around everywhere. Just ran away. But there's like hundreds of rabbits here. Probably a huge problem for everybody that's living here. But looks cute. Cactuses look good. And yeah, no, this is a nice spot. Took the minivan down. Gosh, this minivan sure drives now. It gets horrible gas mileage. It gets like 17, 18 miles a gallon. But did it good. Everybody was comfortable. So heading back today. I wanted to do a video yesterday, but I was just too tired from driving. So hope you like it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.